And I will restart our recording. All right. Thank you to everyone who is willing to step up and serve in this role and in all roles, of course. We had a lot of good candidates. I would also like to apologize for my message that was not intended to be sent to you, but here we are. I would like to clarify to our Diamondback reporter that GSG has not murdered anyone or buried anybody's. Everything is above board here. So congratulations to the next Vice President of Financial Affairs, Annie Rappaport. All right, and with that, we will now move into the next part of our meeting, in which we have 3 acts to consider okay, I got a lot of things open. 3 acts to consider for the Assembly. So we will start, if they are in your folder, we will start, of course, with the one that is first in terms of number, which is GSG A40 A13, which is an act to create a permanent International Student Affairs Committee. So I am the author of the legislation, and so I will go ahead and explain it. All this does, we created this year okay, hold on, I've got the live stream on one screen, and all right. We this year created an ad hoc committee on international student affairs. I thought that was one of our most effective committees. It got a lot of things done, and I think it was really good to have a specific committee to advocate for international students. All this does, add that committee to the bylaws, make it a permanent committee as opposed to an ad hoc committee. With that, I'll go ahead and open debate for anyone who has questions, comments, concerns, edits, etc. Unless no one has any concerns. Alec Dennis.
Motion to vote.
All right, there's a motion to vote. Is there a second?
Second.
Any objection to moving to vote? Okay. Because Edie wasn't here, I forgot to create polls for the actual legislation. So for this one, we'll attempt to move forward by unanimous consent. Is there any objection to adopting the act?
Alec Dennis, Business Management. I think technically, based off our new bylaws, we have to actually have a recorded vote for bills that we are enacting. And so,
yeah,
unfortunately,
I think you're actually right about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so here's what we'll do. Does
do a quick yes/no poll.
Still have the yes/nos?
I have a motion to suspend the rules to allow voting by unanimous consent. Then we can get the rest of these done.
A motion to suspend the rules. That's fun. I don't know that we've done that one before. Is there a second to the motion to suspend the rules? This is
I'll second that.
Literally just so we can vote by unanimous consent, which I think we will probably do on all 3 of these pieces of legislation.
You don't get ahead of yourself.
Okay, all right. I'll step back and not be ahead of myself. All right. Any objection to suspending the rules? All right. Any objection to adopting this act by unanimous consent? Hearing none, the action is agreed to. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. I will now share with you GSG A40 A14 as soon as it shows up as something that I can share with you. Except it's not anything that I can share with you according to my Zoom. You can obviously pull it up and see it, there it is, as a result in the folder that you all should have access to. So this is GSG A40 A14, an act to clarify voting procedures. I'm also the author of this one. This came out of a discussion actually that I had with Yehuda. The way our bylaws are currently written, everybody gets one vote per race in the it says everybody gets one vote per race. In my mind, that's not very clear as to actually how many votes folks get if their department gets more than one representative. Okay, so if your department gets 3 reps, do you get 3 votes or do you get 1 vote? The way I interpreted it and the way we ran this last election, you got 1 vote. I think what we intended when we wrote it was that you would then get 3 votes to vote for, the 3 candidates, or however many candidates you actually get. So what this does is it changes the bylaws just to specify that that's how we should carry it out, which I think is how we always did it in the past, although I can't promise that. Some folks with more institutional memory could correct me on that. So that's what it does, is it just says if your department or your program gets 3 representatives, then you get 3 votes in the election, as opposed to just 1 vote overall. So any questions, comments, concerns? I got to pull my participants tab back up so I can see if people are raising their hands. Okay. Yehuda.
Yehuda Katz, computer science, and the longest ever serving elected representative forever and ever and ever now that there are term limits. I am a sponsor of this resolution. As Simon said, this came about because we discussed it. I am 99.999% sure that we've always had votes for the number of people who there are seats for. If you have 3 seats, you get 3 votes. And this was the first year I was very surprised to see there was only 1 vote. So I suggest that everyone vote for this change to clarify the rules.
Laura McBride.
Laura McBride, chemistry, motion to vote.
Second.
Motion has been heard and seconded. Is there any objection to moving to vote? Hearing no objections, I'll ask unanimous consent that the act be adopted under the suspension of the rules. Are there any objections to this act? All right, excellent. In that case, the act is agreed to. And we have one final piece of legislation, an act to extend the employment of the current GSG Chief of Staff. Let me get this shared with you. You again have access to it, which is really just something I say to fill time while I figure out how Zoom works and can share my screen with you. This act was written by the President and current Vice President of Legislative Affairs, so I'll let them introduce it.
Yeah, so this act is to extend the employment of the current GSG Chief of Staff. This will be a one-time basis, mainly because we are working on the shuttle bus program, and this will ease the transition. So instead, originally the position was supposed to end on the 31st of this month, but if this act is passed, then the position will end on August 20th. This will also entail transferring funds from the discretionary fund from FY 2021, which will be a total of $2,000 from the discretionary fund. And then the remainder of what we would need is $400. And that one would be taken from the discretionary fund from FY 22. And with that, if this act passes, then we would transfer those funds. And that's it. I will turn it back to Simon.
All right, and we'll open debate on GSG A40, A15. Alec Dennis.
Alec Dennis, business PhD program. First off, I have a question. When we were originally writing, trying to decide with the new constitution and bylaws, what would be the assistantships and the tenure of that, one of the things we decided was that the VPFA would be a 12-month assistantship so that they could help run the shuttle bus service, so they could help oversee that. That's why that one's a 12-month. One of the reasons why that one's a 12-month and the VPLA is only a 9-month, despite the VPLA officially being the person who succeeds the president in case of a problem. And so to me, I don't quite understand why we are proposing changing the budget in order to allow, basically in order to provide for the chief of staff to do something that should be one of the VP's official positions. The other thing, and I'm just trying to confirm this right now, I think in our updated bylaws, we stated that any change in budget across budget lines needs to first get the approval of the Budget and Finance Committee. And the Budget and Finance Committee didn't have a vote on this particular bill. So I'm not sure if we are even allowed to consider this. I believe that was something that we put in the, individual shall, where is it? My apologies, I'm just trying to spot the exact line. But I think that might actually, because memory serves, that was something that we talked about.
So
in cases where legislation includes reallocation of GSG funds across budget line items, it must be submitted to the Budget and Finance Committee no later than 15 business days before the assembly meeting at which the submitter wishes the motion to be considered. An affirmative vote of the majority of Budget and Finance Committee shall be required, and there is no affirmative vote on this.
So I don't necessarily disagree with that interpretation. I would wonder whether this is a move across budget lines.
We're reallocating funding from the discretionary line to
we're
salaries.
using money from the discretionary fund, but
well, isn't that the definition of discretionary?
Yeah, so that's why, to me, this is a reallocation of funds. And so it needed GSG, like the BFC approval, and we didn't get it.
Right, but isn't the definition of discretionary that it can be used for any purpose?
It still needs to be reallocated, though.
What if this said by paying the salary out of the discretionary fund as opposed to transferring?
Daniel?
So if we can overrule the rules on unanimous consent, why can't we overrule other bylaws?
We certainly can.
Okay.
I actually didn't think we could. I thought it was because we were suspending Robert's rules, which is something that you're allowed to do under Robert's rules. I didn't think we could just ignore our bylaws. And if so, I think that's a problem, that we can just ignore our bylaws whenever we want. Well,
it does require a vote of the assembly to do so, but so not just whenever we want, but yes, but in general, by following Robert's rules, we would be able to suspend the bylaws. So we can change the bylaws to make it impossible to do that if you want, just not right now. So again, I'm just providing logistics answers. I don't, whether we want to do this or not, that's totally up to obviously the assembly. Yehuda.
I have a motion to amend the act.
Okay.
Instead of saying by transferring funds, I would say by paying the chief of staff from the discretionary fund. Then it's not a line item transfer. It's using the discretionary fund in a discretionary way.
Okay, let me turn on some track changes here. If I remembered how to turn on track changes. Review. Yes. Track changes. I love it when everybody watches me struggle with Microsoft Word. All right. We have an amendment. Is there a second to the motion to amend?
Second.
All right. The motion to amend has been heard and seconded. Are there any comments on the amendment? If anybody wants to indicate on their screen that their hand is up for amendment talk rather than regular talk, so I can see it. Okay. In that case, is there a motion to vote on the amendment?
Motion to vote on the amendment.
And I heard two people say it, so we'll count that as a second.
Second.
All right. Is there any objection to the amendment? Hearing none, the amendment is agreed to, and we will go back to, and I'll unbold this, obviously, comments on the resolution overall.
I was just curious if they could speak to the other point that I raised, which was one of the reasons why we gave the VPFA a 12-month assistantship, is so that they could run things like this.
Yes, absolutely. Dan or Ellie, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I can. So there's a couple thought processes that went into it. The first was what was just put in the chat by Jen. So the director of operations is also part of this and helps to organize this process. But Edie, as a graduating international student, can't transition to a contract like I did. So he is no longer employed. Well, assistants aren't employees, but isn't getting paid by the university and isn't in his role anymore, unfortunately. So there is no DOO from now until the new one would start July 1st. So that's part of it, bridging that gap. And then the second thought was just the timeline of the responsibilities of coordinating the program and when one VPFA would stop versus when the next one would start. So when we wrote it, we didn't know that the incoming VPFA would have shuttle bus experience. But that being said, so to have our chief of staff, who's already working with some of the committee chairs, just be able to go all the way through mid to late August when the program would be over, was the idea. And since we hadn't used the discretionary fund and it would just move to our surplus fund that just sits there, we figured it'd be a pretty good use of the discretionary fund.
All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Motion to unsuspend the rules, since this one we're not going to get unanimous consent over, I suspect.
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't really need to unsuspend them because you would just object to the unanimous consent. But yes, okay. So we'll actually hold a vote on this if someone motions to vote, which no one has done yet.
The one other thing that I would just say is, especially since Annie does know what she's talking about and has experience with the shuttle bus, this would be perhaps less important than it might have been if we were having a VPFA who didn't understand shuttle buses.
Some might say she knows where the bodies are buried. Misty.
Misty Yang Communication. I just want to kind of understand, but typically the director of operations would also be playing a role in this, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so there is a net less working hours that would be dedicated to this in our current situation.
Correct.
Okay, so I just want to say that I think I am in support of this. I think it's important. We don't need to put extra work on graduate students' plates when we already know that we are overworked and underpaid. And if we have this discretionary fund, I think this is a great way to support our graduate students, both making sure that those that are already working on this don't get overtaxed, and to ensure those that have put efforts in and can continue to work on it get compensated for their time. So I'm in support of this.
Autumn.
Point of information, I want to ask Gianna a question of what she plans to do next year, because I think this might be an important point to bring up, since I think this will be a continued effort.
Do you mean next year as far as my role in GSG? Yes, you're kind of frozen. I think you just nodded your head yes. Okay.
Yes.
So I will be here through December. I'm actually graduating then. The new exec team, so you, Autumn, Tamara, and Annie will actually have to hire another chief of staff. I plan to apply again, but obviously I might have competition, so there could be other people in the running. So that's my plan. I would like to be here through December and assist and transition for the next chief of staff, but that will be up to you guys ultimately.
I'll just say I don't think you have any competition, Gianna. It's not a competition if you're so far ahead. Any other points on this legislation?
Motion to vote.
Motion to vote. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, the motion has been heard and seconded. Is there any objection to moving to vote? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and use the yes/no function on your participants tab. And I will do my best to know how to count. So if you believe that this act should be passed, you would vote yes. If you believe the act should not be passed, please vote no. Unless not everybody has the participants tab because people have different versions of Zoom.
Simon, we've run into this problem before. The yeses and
vanish.
nos don't stay, they vanish.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me try something really quick.
Do we want to do raise hand function where all the yays raise hand and then lower hand and then all the nos raise hand and then lower hand?
Give me 1 second. All right, I've created a poll. I'm putting it in the chat. Everyone should be able to vote. It's from freepollmaker.com. Make a poll in seconds, it says. And it delivered. So if anybody has a problem with the link, then we can do the raise hand function. It's just easier to do it this way because the counting is actually pretty difficult.
Autumn, I hope you're taking notes on all these wild things you'll have to do next year.
Hopefully we're in person so I can count on that.
You can actually count hands.
All right. The vote will be open for another 5-ish seconds. With the time to vote expiring, I'll now see if I can see the results of this poll.
We can all see the results of the poll. It was yes 17, no 2, abstain 1.
The yeses are 17, the nos are 2, and the abstentions are 1. So thank you all for voting. That is our last piece of...
For some reason, the map shows that some people voted from Cuba.
Sweet. All right. That is the last piece of legislation on the agenda, which means we will now move into Representatives Forum. If anyone has anything they'd like to bring up before we finish our final assembly meeting of the year. Valerie Hall.
I just want to thank our executive team and take a moment to recognize all the hard work that they have done this year through some truly remarkable COVID challenges. And Simon's incredible work today as well, trying to manage the live feed and everything else. But really, it's very much appreciated. And I'm very sad to be leaving GSG with the amazing executive team coming in as well. So, call on me if you need my help, I guess. But yeah, thanks to everybody.
The only reason I scheduled Representatives Forum was so that someone would say nice things about me. Mission accomplished. President Lappin.
One thing, now I have 2 things. I also just want to thank the executive team and all of you. There are a lot of things that when I set out to do them, I tapped on a lot of shoulders for help, even though it's not necessarily your responsibilities to help with those presentations or those town halls or, things like that. But you all stepped up in your roles. And I'm very grateful for it. I also want to mention my other thing. If any of you are or know of an international student who is struggling with housing, either finding housing or the cost of housing, or moving back to the College Park area next year, I'm chatting with a reporter who's doing a piece on the availability of graduate housing and the cost of it. And one of the things I mentioned was that it's like particularly difficult for international students. And she was like, "Oh, like, are you?" And I was like, "No, but I maybe can find one that would be willing to talk." So if you're willing to chat with a reporter about it, it can be anonymously, or if you know someone that would want to do it anonymously or not, just let me know and I'll toss my email in the chat. Thanks, everyone.
Dan, I also assume that you intend to sign all 3 pieces of legislation passed today.
I do, yeah. And we'll get the pieces from 2 weeks ago on the website as well.
Alec.
Alec Dennis, business management. Just one quick side thing that my wife was talking to me about. She was reading through like the whole new parental leave policy and some for graduate students and some of those things there. One thing that she brought to my attention, I didn't read it initially, so this was on me, is that when in cases where both parents are actually graduate students, the amount of leave is actually split between them. You don't get each parent getting 6 weeks. It is now 6 weeks between the couple for the couple to decide however they feel so inclined to. And now either that means graduate students are so essential that we cannot afford to have both gone for 6 weeks, or that's just giving the 2 or 3 students who that happens to happen to, because they need to be both parents and both be graduate students, a really raw deal. I don't think we have, I didn't become aware of this with enough time to actually write a piece of legislation this year, and this will also be my last meeting as an assembly member. I've been grateful for the opportunity to serve, but I just wanted to bring that up as a thing for the GSG to potentially confront next year, because not only are graduate students getting nominally less leave than regular employees, if they happen to both be it, then they get an even rawer deal, which is not good for anyone. So just wanted to point that out.
It appears President-elect Allard has something to say on the issue.
Yeah, so this is, again, not a new issue, as a couple of people have pointed out in the comments, and it's something that actually has come to my attention recently, and I know that Autumn and Annie are both very aware of this policy also. And it's actually something that we recently discussed with Dean Federer. And I'm gonna guess, Autumn, I see, has her hand raised. She probably has something to say about what we heard in our GAC meeting. And I'll say that some part of that conversation was also just noting that even the amount of time that is allotted for one parent, right? Let's say you're not splitting the time, is not enough. It's simply not enough. It's not enough. Medically, it's not enough. Anyway, I don't know, maybe you want to throw to Autumn next to kind of respond to this also.
Autumn Perky.
Autumn Perky, GVPT. So I'm going to respond to this because I have been complaining about this for a year. Some of you have heard me whine about this because I think it's concerning, because if we think about FMLA leave policies, which this ties back to collective bargaining rights, unfortunately, they get up to 12 weeks, usually paid at a certain level if you're a state employee. If that employer has at least 50 employees, which I think the university system in Maryland has way more than 50 employees. I think we have to think about tangible goals. This was brought up at the GAC meeting. For those of you considering becoming parents, this is a load of bull crap. I'm going to be frank, because a woman takes at least 5 to 6 weeks to heal so she can actually go back to her normal job. I think we should advocate to get 6 weeks for all graduate parents, like for the man and the woman. Maybe we won't get the 12 weeks, but Alec, if you want to be a dad, you should have 6 weeks and your partner should have 6 weeks. I'll be quiet now, but I'm very passionate about this issue.
I also wanted to say that if we were considered employees by the state, the American Family Act, I think that's right, that would affect us, right? And so then that would require the school to take action, if that were to pass, to provide equal leave between parents, I believe.
The other thing that I just add in is a gender equity issue, especially given some of what Autumn brought up, given some of the biological healing needs, it would disproportionately probably be then the female parent who is taking the leave, which then further perpetuates stereotypes of caregiving and all these sorts of things. So it creates there's a lot of knock-on, not great effects. So yeah, something to think about I think we're all in agreement that this is not good policy.
I'll stop. I wouldn't say I could go on and 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 on.
Yes, I don't think you'll find opposition from the incoming executive team. Laura McBride.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up that great point. That's definitely something we should address next year. Simon, my question is about the recent elections. Do you know when people will know that they've been reelected and or elected?
As soon as I have time to go through the spreadsheet, people will know. I have to grade a bunch of finals very soon. So that may take a little bit, but I will say, and this is the one thing that I wanted to bring up, there were some mistakes made in election administration this year, entirely by me. It's entirely on me. So I am going to attempt to help our new Vice President of Legislative Affairs with a very robust midterm election set up for at the beginning of next year, so that we can really get people on the ground off and running and really increase the size of GSG, because I think that's really, really important for that. So when that happens, please, folks, do recruit people actively, send out the link, all that sort of stuff. If you're not going to be a GSG member next year, make sure that there's someone in your department who can do it. And don't the thing that I think is important is don't just make sure that the department knows, but if you're in other student groups, we made a really concerted effort this year to actually reach out to other student groups. I did not get a single response from another student group. That doesn't mean they weren't sharing the link. It just means they didn't email me back to tell them, to tell me that they were sharing the link. But we really made a concerted effort there. I think that's how we can expand GSG as opposed to just the same departments over and over again. That's how we get new departments involved, is somebody else is in the Black Student Union or the Indian Student Union or whatever, and all those groups. So I'm gonna attempt to help Autumn to run a good midterm election at that time, so that we can correct some of the mistakes that I definitely made in running the election this time.
Great, thanks, Simon. And then I would like to just say thanks to the great exec team for this year, and then all the reps who served this year. I think we got a lot done, and so it was really good. And to anyone who's not coming back because they're graduating or just won't be able to serve another assembly, it's been great working with you. And hopefully I'll get to see a lot of you next year, and we can get some more work done.
All right. Unless there are any final comments for Representatives Forum, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
The motion has been heard. Is there a second?
Second.
Any objection to adjourning the final meeting of the 40th Assembly of the Graduate Student Government? Hearing none, thank you all. See you around. Great work this year.